Este Saron con Inacomputers.com otro video para ti. Hoy I have before me one of these laptops that was recycled over the weekend. It's an IBM Thinkpad R32. It's an older school laptop, Pentium 4, single core. It's got some problems. I think it may have a bad or just a dead Cmos battery because it has an error about the date and time. I go into the BIOS, I change the date and time, but if I unplug the power cable, the AC adapter from the wall outlet, well then the next time I boot up it gives me an error saying the date and time is incorrect. So that to me is a symptom of a failing Cmos battery, and then I've decided to wipe it. The customer I think wiped this drive before, although when I originally went into Derek's Boot and Nuke it found two partitions. However, IBM's like this one, older ones, if you press F11 it will restore the computer back to factory. However, I tried that multiple times and it wouldn't work, so it's possible that the factory partition was already wiped or whatever. So I'm gonna go ahead and wipe it with Derek's Boot and Nuke. Also, this type of laptop, since it's older, has an IDE drive, just to let you know, 30 gigabytes. And I've got this Derek's Boot and Nuke version 1.07 that comes on the on the Hiren's 15.1 CD. So I just decided to wipe it. It's possible that the previous customer wiped it, but I just go through and wipe it. Now this is one of my litmus tests. Looks like we have a possible problem with the Cmos battery. I may not be able to sell this laptop, believe it or not, because if the scenario is if I ship the laptop or whatever, somebody purchases this laptop, as soon as they disconnect from the wall power and it tries to run off the battery, well, the system date and time gets changed. Well, on this R32 IBM, it automatically goes into the BIOS and then it requests you to change the date and time, and it will not allow you to proceed any further until you change the fucking time and date. Well, I don't know if when I load Windows XP Professional, it may fix that but every time you boot the computer and if you unplug from the power, the AC adapter, well, the system date and time will get changed in the BIOS. It's not saving the date and time in the BIOS, even though if you were to boot it into Windows XP. And then I tried to boot off the F12. So again, you know, a lot of neophytes, a lot of technology neophytes, they don't even know what a BIOS is, basic input output system. They don't even know how to enter the BIOS. They don't even know how to change the clock in the BIOS. They don't know that some computers have a special menu where you can select what device to boot off of, whether it's network, Pixie, a floppy drive, even back old school, USB, you know, removable media, a DVD, a hard drive, you know, blah, 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 blah. They don't even know there's a menu that you can tell the computer what device to boot off of. So it's just going to cause a fucking firestorm, because if the potential customer has to take any additional steps, they'll get frustrated. They might call me up and cuss at me and threaten me and blah, 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 blah. So if I can't rectify that, you know, I might not be able to sell this laptop. Or maybe I could declare in the advertisement that this is there is an issue with the BIOS password not being saved. And maybe somebody that's more tech knowledgeable won't care, and you know what I'm saying. We shall see. So I'm wiping it. It'll take a while. It's only at 4%. But this is one of my litmus tests. Is I run dban, Derek's Boot Nuke. If it successfully wipes the hard drive and at the very end it says dban successful, I assume the hard drive is good. Dban is very sensitive. At the beginning it'll tell you if there's too many bad sectors, too many bad clusters, and it will not run. It will not wipe the drive. In the middle it'll tell you that, or even at the end it'll finish, but at the end it'll say non-fatal errors, dban was not successful, usually this is because of bad sectors and bad clusters. You know what I'm saying? Anything else about Derek's Boot Nuke? Oh, also you can kind of monitor it. Now it's not always absolute, but sometimes it'll, you know, wipe pretty quick. Right now it's pretty good. You can look at the throughput. Sometimes the throughput will tank. It'll just drop. And then all of a sudden it takes longer and longer to wipe, and it slows down. And then sometimes you'll get errors. So that could be that where there are some bad sectors and there are some bad clusters, and that's why the throughput just dropped, and that's why it's not, you know, wiping as fast as it once was. So you can kind of monitor it that way, but usually I just set it and forget it. I come back in a couple hours, and I always use the defaults. There's, you know, with DBAN, I boot off the Heron. Now, another issue I had with this laptop, since it has an IDE drive with the pins, I have an IDE adapter for my dual core newer computer that has SATA connectors, but it's been a while since I've used that adapter, so I didn't want to. I just decided not to fuck with it. And then also I had my flash drive. I have a flash drive with the newest version of Derek Boot Nuke, which is 2.3. I could not get this IBM R32 laptop to boot off of it. I tried both USB ports and it just wouldn't boot off of it. So it's possible that this IBM R32 has older USB like 1.0 or 1.1, and it may not support 2.0. So I do have Derek's Boot Nuke on a higher end CD, but it's version 1.07, which is older. I don't know if you can see that. Should be able to see it up there. Version 1.07. So, but it's older, and back then IDE drives were, you know, obviously still being used, so it's not a big deal. I'll be back when it finishes booting. Excuse me, finishes wiping. I'm distracting myself. Anything else I want to go over this? It could be a bad BIOS battery. Now, with some of these laptops, IBM's, a lot of times they're not a coin-shaped one, but they could be. But a lot of times they're encased with a plastic outer, and then there's a little power cable attached to them, and then they plug into the motherboard. And so I already kind of took this laptop apart a little bit. The hard drive is actually right here. Even though you have the microphone, headphone, USB ports, this piece of plastic is held on by one screw, and actually this attaches to the hard drive, and then the hard drive fits right behind. Oops, the hard drive fits right behind these ports, barely. So that's kind of cool, but I had to figure that one out because it confused me. I was like, well, wait a minute, how the fuck could the hard drive fit even though there's a, you know, USB headphone mic jack? The RAM is under here. There's a wireless card underneath here. The battery's here, and I checked underneath the hard drive under the wireless card cover underneath the battery. I did not see this Cmos battery. Sometimes with laptops they're underneath one of these compartments. This one I couldn't find it, so it could be underneath the keyboard. I just don't know. I'd have to, you know, search it on the internet. And so in order for me to fix it, I got to try to find out why the computer does not save the system date and time every time you unplug it from the AC adapter. It could, I'm thinking it most likely the battery, but I don't know that for a fact. Maybe I need to update the BIOS. So I might, you know, is it worth my time and effort to try to sell a single core Pentium 4 IBM laptop? It's an R32 is pretty good condition, but if I have to start, you know, researching and then, you know, upgrading the BIOS and then taking it apart just so that I can get to the, you know, Cmos battery. Now what you could do is you could unhook the Cmos battery from the motherboard, by just unhooking the little power cable, if it's that type of Cmos battery. I'm thinking it is, but I don't know that for a fact. That sometimes clear things up. But if this computer does not save the date and time, it could cause problems for a computer user that they don't know. They're not going to know what the fuck a Cmos battery is. They're not going to fucking know what the BIOS is, basic input output system, blah 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 blah. So we shall see. I'll be back when it finished wiping, and then I'll go ahead and try to install Windows XP. Now I'm thinking maybe Windows XP will keep the date and time correct, and every time it boots it'll save the date and time. But anytime you unhook the fucking AC adapter, oh, it gives you an error, check some error, date and time incorrect, and then it automatically boots into the BIOS, and then it wants you to change the date and time. I'll be back. I'm back. Ran into some problems. Number one, the CD media that I have for Windows XP is pretty old. I have 2 burned copies of Windows XP Professional and 1 OEM Dell, or it might have been a retail, whatever, Dell Windows XP Service Pack 3 CD, and they all have problems when you load them. They start to have troubles loading files, which could mean it's old media, scratched media, blah 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 blah. So I decided to rip one of the CDs, which you can do, rip it and then create an ISO file and then burn the ISO file. Only instead of CD, I don't use CD media. I don't burn CDs normally, or DVDs. It's just not. DVDs are probably better than CDs. I don't know, whatever. I don't do a lot of that because they get scratched up, and so I decided to put on a flash drive. So I've got this flash drive. But before that, when I was installing Windows XP Service Pack 3, one of the times it crashed the computer. This Lenovo R32 just crashed right in the middle of the install. The battery was plugged in and connected and charged, but the computer just shut right off right in the middle of the install. You never want that to happen. You never want to sell a computer that just shuts off for no reason to anybody. Now, if you want to keep it for yourself and you know that, well, suffer the consequences. But there could be multiple reasons why the computer just shut off. It could be a bad AC adapter. This computer came with 2, so I can always test that out. It also could be that the computer just overheated, which laptops tend to do. They're more susceptible because the components are smaller. So a lot of laptops have 2 vents, one on each side. Not all laptops have 2 vents. Sometimes they have a vent underneath. This one, this one, I don't know if you want to technically call that a vent, but it would be a larger vent. That's a small one. That's really negligible to me. What I mean by vent is something this sized. This is an air vent, airflow vent. Sometimes they get plugged up with dust. Canned air doesn't cut it. I don't waste money. I don't waste time buying canned air because it's just a waste. I mean, literally, you're wasting a good can made out of aluminum or whatever metal, and then what it gets thrown into a trash, even though you only used it a couple times, just completely ridiculous. An air compressor would be excellent for this, but just make sure that you use a nozzle that regulates the air, because some of the air compressors can actually damage computer components. So one symptom of the computer just powering off right in the middle of an install, or just at any time, is it overheated. So what you can do is you can blow out the dust from this vent, blow out the dust from this vent. This looks like the heat sink right here. And sometimes I try that first, and if that doesn't solve the problem, then I go ahead and take the laptop apart and I blow out the fan, and I even clean out fans. I use water. Obviously water and electricity don't mix, but most of these fans inside these computers are made out of plastic. If you use water on metal, it can cause it to, over time, blah 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 blah, rust. Water on plastic, I've found, I try never to use chemicals. I never use chemical cleaners on computers. I just try to avoid it. But, or even heat sinks made out of aluminum, I'll just run it under really hot water and really clean up well. But I make sure that I leave the heat sinks and fans, plastic fans, either overnight or near a fan, and I make sure there is no water. You don't want any moisture left. Yeah, I guess I need to study further whether, pun intended, let's see, aluminum and water, and will it cause it to rust? Moving on. At least I avoid using cleaners, commercial cleaners. So another symptom of a computer that just powers off for absolutely without warning at any moment is RAM. So I'm going to do that now, and then I'm going to try to install Windows XP from a flash drive. However, this is an older IBM. It's an R32. It's a single core Pentium 4. I would say it's closer to 15 years old, somewhere around there. I haven't even really looked it up yet. It's possible that it will not detect my flash drive because the flash drive could be USB 2.0 and this laptop could just have USB 1.0 or 1.1 ports. The memory is underneath here, just 2 screws. What I'm going to do is I'm going to clean the gold contacts, and I'm also going to move the memory module to a different slot. It's installed there. I'm going to take it out. You just pull outwards these little pins, and then just pull out. It'll angle about 45 degrees, and that's it. And I try to hold the memory by its edges. Now, computer recyclers like the gold on memory because it's real gold. I don't know if silver is valuable enough for computer recyclers to, gather up older memory. Now, some memory is made with silver, some is made with gold. Now I'm going to get my eraser, and I'm going to clean the gold contacts on this memory because this is an old school tip. And I can already see that it's cleaning up. So, I don't know on camera, but with the naked eye I can already see that it's shining up the gold. And it actually removed, right there where my eraser's at, it actually removed some discoloration. Now with gold it's hard to tell how oxidized it is and how much buildup there is because a lot of times it blends in. But in this case I could tell that it was shining it up a little bit, and also some darker areas of discoloration disappeared with the eraser. So I'm just gonna circle back and forth, north and south, whatever. Since I did clean it up, then I'm gonna do a really good job. You can use rubbing alcohol. I don't like that term, but whatever. For the layman, I guess, but isopropyl alcohol, 99% rubbing alcohol is what I would recommend on gold contacts. It evaporates quickly. And you Americans will get a high off of it because that's all you care about. Some of you Americans, I should clarify that. And then you notice, I don't know if on camera, but with the naked eye I can tell the difference between this side and then on the other side this gap. You see that little gap? This side I can see some discoloration just by looking at it, especially on the left hand side. So I'm just gonna clean this off, and it should become shinier. I'll do it in a circle, and I'll do it up and down, and then side to side, and just really shiny it up, make it nice and shiny. And even the other side. Sometimes on some memory modules there is no gold on the other side, believe it or not. It's just on one side. This one there's actually gold on both sides. Gold contacts. Some of these memory modules are made out of silver. Yeah, this one's really discolored, which I can see with the naked eye. A lot of times with these gold contacts I can't really tell, but I still clean the contacts because there's going to be buildup because of physics, oxidization, and just physics. Alright, you also want to make sure you get the rubber eraser. If it leaves any, you can take a air compressor and blow it off, or take a cloth or something. Just get it, try to get it off. Alright, now this one I can tell with the naked eye. I just clean this side up, the right hand side, and it's a lot shinier compared to this left hand side. On the other side of the gap, it has a lot of buildup on it. Discolored. Now, a few weeks ago I made a video where I cleaned the contacts on a circuit board on a Western Digital 500 gigabyte hard drive, and actually and I re-imaged it. I should have wiped it with Derek's Boot and Nuke, but I didn't. But I could always do that later. It's just my recovery computer. It doesn't matter as long as I have an operating system and a couple of tools on it. I just don't give a fuck. But that computer has not had any issues since then. I made a video showing you how it was just acting weird, and I couldn't repair Windows 10 on it, even check disk, and I decided to clean the contacts. Now I try to do this twice, but I did a really good job, so I'll just do it quick. Just quickly, just really fast. I'm not sure how much, if this matters, but I usually do at least 2 times. I just try to clean more than once. But even with the rubber eraser, this works sometimes. And I need to get rid of the little rubber crumbs left behind, even inside the memory slot. I'll just take a little bit of it out. Air compressor would be excellent for laptops, but you have to put on a nozzle to control the airflow because you don't want to use too much air. So I'm going to move the slot. Now I'm going to also clean the contacts on the board itself. I think they might have some gold and silver on the contacts, so I'm just going to, let's see, I'm going to line this up as if I was going to install it, so I know exactly where I should. Oh, it goes right there. It's the top. Alright, so I'm going to clean inside there. I don't know if I can get to it. Probably not. No, I can't even get to the contacts, so I can't clean these. I don't even know if you could get isopropyl alcohol. You see where the gold contacts are right there? Where the memory? You see where my eraser is right there? Right there. There's contacts there, but they're sometimes they're easier to get to, sometimes you can't really get to them. Now, I can't get to them with a rubber eraser. So that kind of sucks. Alright, and I can't get to these other ones either. But if I could, I would clean both of those contacts too. I'm going to move the memory to a different slot because, believe it or not, once in a while, these dynamic inline memory module slots, these DIMM slots, they actually fail. It could be bad solder, they just fail, and then what happens is the computer starts acting weird, or it won't boot, or it might even cause a computer to just shut off. Sometimes these slots fail, and it could be the soldering below. I don't know if you can tell on camera, but these slots are soldered in below, and you know what I mean, and they do fail once in a while. And my phone just fell, but I don't give a shit. I have more than one phone for that purpose. I have 3 of those same phones, same model. Let's see. So move it, so you just angle it degrees or whatever into the slot. Just press down and boom. Okay, we completed this task. Shut up! Why? I can hear you. This buffoon in this next office. He has what? He has toned it down, but every once in a while I can hear everything he says. And so when that happens, I just try to talk over him. Because he's not in the next office. It's not, if he was in the next office, okay. Well, I wouldn't rent because I don't like to hear people talk. But he's the office over. There are 2 walls between me and him, and I can hear him talk like really loud. All right. So let me tighten this up. I don't know why you're talking so loud today, but whatever. Okay, so we've got that. Let me attend to I'm also trying to make a little bit of food here, and my phone decided to think for itself. I don't know. My phone decided to just whatever. So let me. Okay, I don't think it'll fall. All right, so let me tend to my oatmeal real quick. Yes, I do eat oatmeal. If you're offended by that, I don't give a fuck. I'm mostly a raw food vegan, but I eat a little bit of oatmeal and some rice just to. They're filler. They're dead food, but grains are pretty much dead. Raw fruits and vegetables is live food. It has live enzymes and amino acids and vitamins and minerals that your body needs. But I just incorporate a little bit of oatmeal and some rice because as a raw food vegan, mostly raw food vegan, you have to eat I would say 4 to 5 times more than some people, because fruits and vegetables are based upon water. They're heavily water based, like tomatoes, strawberries, grapes, even cucumbers. There's a lot of water, so if you don't eat enough calories, you have a problem with not enough energy. So that's why I incorporate a little bit of oatmeal and some rice. And I don't give a fuck if you're offended by that, because I think for myself. I'm not one of these lunatic vegans on the internet that, they'll point out. It's almost impossible to become 100% vegan if you think about it. Now, I'm going to try to boot it off this flash drive, but if I was a betting man, it may not work, because this is probably USB 2.0 and this is 1.1 or 1.0, and it's just not going to boot. But we can always try. Some older, some dual cores, a lot of dual core laptops, I can boot off of this flash drive. There's 2 USB ports, and then we'll just power this guy on. Another thing that can cause a laptop to just power off is a battery. So what you can do is you can take the battery out and just run it off the AC adapter. Yeah, see. Let's see. Now, I got to get to that special boot menu. Another problem that this laptop still might have is the Cmos The Cmos battery might not be functioning properly because the date and time is not saved. Okay, so I want to choose removable devices. I don't know if you can see that. It's the top one. And we'll see what happens. No, see, it won't detect it. But I'll try this other slot. I'm going to try this other, I don't know what this other device is either. There's some other device that I have no idea what it is. Maybe this laptop detects this as something funky, something out of the ordinary. The IBA 4, I don't know what that is. IBA 4002 slot, blah 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 blah. So I'm going to try that. Nope. Intel boot agent version. That could be some kind of Pixie boot. Yeah, that's what it is. It's Pixie. Pixie is a way to boot off of a network. You can actually install operating systems off of a network if you do not have a CD, DVD, USB, or back in the day floppy disks. You can actually boot off of a network, and so that if I have to, I could install Windows off the network. Setting up Pixie isn't that difficult. Let me try this other USB slot. You should learn ways. You should start thinking outside of a box. They don't teach you this when you get a job. They don't give a fuck. Now, if it's part of the job duties, when you interview, they'll ask you, do you know what Pixie is? Or tell me what Pixie means. Or do you have experience with Pixie? Do you have experience installing operating systems off the network? Now, if some technicians are nice, most managers are not. Most information technology managers I had to deal with were fucking assholes. The males were assholes, the women were bitches. I'll be honest and blunt. And you may not want to admit that you don't know how to use Pixie. Especially if you interviewed and that was one of the job duties. And then, oh, you don't know what Pixie is. Well, they'll just fire your ass. Some other technicians that are nice, they might show you. But generally, I used to just ignore managers. They were military style assholes and bitches that were not worth my time. Now, if I had a question that I had to ask a manager, usually it was something more to do with hours, or I didn't get paid, but when it came to my job duties, I would never waste time asking a manager, because a lot of times they don't know anything. I'm not making that shit up. When I worked for level 3, I had a manager from another department admit to me, to my face, that he didn't know anything about the job duties required in his department. He even told me that his degree when he graduated from college had nothing to do with technology. But he was a nice guy. He was one of the few managers that was actually a decent guy, although he worked in a different department. But he admitted to me that his job was to know how to get his employees to work, and that was it. But he admitted that he actually didn't have like a technical background. Moving on. Let's try this slot. This Lenovo R32 has a USB port on the left-hand side, on the side, and one in the rear. Removable devices! Yeah, this isn't going to boot. So, I don't know what, I'm going to have to figure this out. I might have to set up a Pixie Boot to show you, well, I might have to in order to install Windows XP. The 3 CDs that I have that have Windows XP on them are starting to fail. And it's like a pain in the ass. I can use all 3, but it just takes more time. So, it's not going to boot off of this flash drive. It's probably because the ports are 1.0 and the flash drive is 2.0. So, you know what I'm saying? I'll be back when I figure out something else. I'll see if it won't take that long. Pixie Boot, you just set up like a TFTP server, and then you put the ISO out on a server, and then you set it up with I would recommend that you set it up with a password, but you don't have to. You don't have to, you can have it without a username and a password. And then what's going to happen is then I use the Pixie Boot, which I know is available. Even modern computers, that is an option. It might not be enabled in the BIOS. And then it'll just pull the install files off of the server, but I still have to set up the ISO file so that it is accessible over the network. I'll be back. I'm back. I'm going to install off of CD. I have 3 Windows XP CDs. I'm pretty sure one of them I burned, and so one is a burned copy. This is a Dell Windows XP CD, and not always, but I noticed in the past you could use certain OEM CDs in other manufacturer computers. It just depends on. In this case, it should work. So I'm going to power off. And since I have 2 CDs, I'll show you a trick I learned a long time ago. If you've got one CD or one media that is failing, DVD or CD, in this case a CD, what you do is, if you have a backup copy, so we're going to boot off CD-ROM. If you have a backup copy, then when this CD starts failing, some of the files won't install, then you use the backup copy. Now, if both CDs are damaged, it's still possible that you have 2 good working CDs and you should be able to get all the files installed. It's not perfect, but especially with the older operating system, this is a trick I learned long ago. And I'd have to set up a TFTP server right now, and my internet gateway is down because actually I had to go back and use Windows Vista Business, because it's a long story, but since we're waiting for this to start, trying to share on Linux, I think there's a bug with all Debian distributions when you try to share the Wi-Fi connection. Let's say you're using a wireless connection on a laptop or even a desktop, and you connect to the internet somehow. Well, when you go to share that connection, a lot of these wireless device manufacturers, they don't update their drivers, and so there's kind of a known bug where it's just when it starts, when you use network address translation and you start forwarding packets, it's terrible. Even the Wi-Fi connection will drop, and that's a known issue. I've tried different Debian distributions, and so I just okay. So to set up Windows XP, you notice how this is almost exactly like Windows 2000 setup. Let's see if I can move the camera. You notice how it's almost, this camera's a piece of shit. Okay, so hit enter, hit F8. I'm going to delete the partition, press D, and then press enter, and then press L, and then I'm just going to hit enter. It'll create the partition even if I don't press C. I'm going to format it, the quick format, because it doesn't really matter. Windows formatting tool sucks. It formats the file system either FAT or NTFS, but that's all I care about. But as far as it, like, now Microsoft Windows formatting tool is inferior, because I don't want to talk about this again. Quick, when I wipe drives and I use direct boot and nuke, I notice the performance is much better. What I mean by that, if you try to install Windows on top of Windows, let's say this hard drive had Microsoft Windows still on it, and I just decided to reinstall Windows XP, and then I decided just to use the Microsoft formatting tool. Well, a lot of times you'll notice weird computing occurrences, just sluggish, or the desktop will freeze, or just something, it just doesn't work right. So that's where I learned to wipe the hard drive with a tool similar, or with Derek's Boot and Nuke, before I go ahead and install the operating system, because I noticed that fixes a lot of the weird issues. Microsoft, they can brag all they want about their formatting tool. It's obviously sufficient enough to format the file system so that it's either FAT or an NTFS, but to think that Microsoft format tool somehow is a 0 and 1 or low level format, or a format that, no, No. No, man. Okay, I'll be back. I will be back when it errors out. I'm pretty sure, I'm not sure, I don't remember where, but somewhere on this CD, it's either damaged or too many scratches, and then it will fail. And I'll be back. Okay, on screen you can see that this failed. It reached, I think, 88%. Setup cannot copy the file xpbat crt.wave. Wave is just a sound file. I could just say fuck it and skip it, but I never do that. Because even the computers I build, I never ever just skip files because well, this is just a sound file, but you just, especially for a customer, you know, you just want to make sure all files get installed. However, I'm going to show you this trick. So I'm going to eject the DVD drive. It's actually a CD, but this is a DVD drive. So I'm going to eject the CD, and I have a burned copy. So this is a Dell Windows XP Service Pack 3. If you load it on a different manufacturer's computer, it doesn't really matter. All it does is it loads a tiny bit of bloatware, really not that much bloatware. You can actually edit it in the registry. When you click on Start and you go into the properties for the computer, the system properties, it'll say the company is Dell, and it might even have their logo, but you can edit that out of the registry. It's not a big deal. You can fix that. I never even waste time doing it. And then there's a couple different, there's also a folder. There's a Dell folder that gets created, I think, on the C drive. Just the root of the C drive that you can delete that out after you edit the registry. So I have a burned copy. However, believe it or not, this burned copy is old now, and this is starting to have problems. However, what we can do is we can play musical CDs. And I have 2 CDs that, you know, function to a certain extent, and so we'll be able to finish this installation. This is an old school trick I learned. So hit enter to retry. It's at 88%. It's trying to copy that .wav file, and then it moved along. So it's copying more files, but that CD also is starting to fail, and I think it'll error out. And then I just install the other CD. I just keep flipping back and forth until I get to 100%. This one, I think it's going to fail. Yep. Setup cannot copy the file. Zip folder.dll. Dynamic link library files are important. I would never skip those. I never skip files during an installation. That's just not the right thing to do, man. Oh, I don't know why I put it back in the case. Or did I? Well, oh, no, I didn't. I was going to say, why the fuck did I do that? Okay, so we'll just play musical CDs until we complete this installation. And so far the computer has not shut down on me today at all. Yesterday, while I was installing Windows XP, it died. The computer just shut off. I just usually give it a few moments for the CD to get mounted, and then I hit enter. And then it's at 89%, and down below you can see it's installing files. But it might die, it might fail at this one. Yep. So we'll just keep playing musical CDs, although we're not playing music, because if you do play music on YouTube, YouTube is fascist and the system is mentally ill and cares about copyright. I don't give a shit about copyright. But I guess in a system that uses money, which is another mental illness, you know, people get all pissed off if you dare play their music without them getting royalties. But to me, to make a better world, you quit using money, you quit being selfish, and you learn how to share. You just learn how to share, and you learn how to help each other out. But that's not what the world order wants, and that's not how the world is designed. It may never change. Yeah, quite frankly, I don't give a fuck. in about 30 years I'll probably be expired permanently, and most of you will celebrate when I do disappear off the planet. Alright, so even my subscribers, I'm sure, will be happy when I leave YouTube, if I ever do. Okay, now this could be a big problem here. It hasn't failed yet, but yeah, this is bad. Bad. Bad, bad, bad. So let's try the first CD that I actually started the install. You see how many scratches it has? Trust me, I've tried it. I've cleaned this all up with water, hot water, toothpaste, peanut butter. It's so heavily used that it's starting to, it's asking for retirement. So we'll go back to this CD and we'll try it again. Now I do have a third CD, believe it or not, that I might be able to use. If not, I'm fucked. Yep, so both CDs are failing at this file. To me, I know at one time these CDs worked, but over time they started getting old and scratched up and blah 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 blah. Now I do have a compact one that it only has Service Pack 2, so there could be a problem. But see, I just want the installation to proceed. So even if I can get a couple of files off of each CD, since I'm already at 89%, then eventually I'll be able to complete this install. Otherwise I'll have to get a TFTP server running, and Linux is much better to set up a TFTP server so that you can Pixie Boot, so that you can install operating systems over the network. Now Linux is excellent. I recommend you use Linux to route packets for network address translation, IP masquerading, firewall, all that. Samba, the file server on Linux called Samba, is 2 to 3 times faster than Windows Server. I have no idea why you would pay for Windows Server when you could build a Linux server, and it's actually better and it's faster. However, I ran into that problem with sharing a Wi-Fi connection. Now, I think it's exclusive. It might be exclusive to Debian distributions and also Broadcom drivers. But a lot of the Wi-Fi devices I have are Broadcom. Let me think. I had an Arthurios, and then I think it could be, I don't know. Linux, when it comes to Wi-Fi drivers, a lot of the Wi-Fi, you're lucky if the Wi-Fi manufacturer even, has a Linux driver. The problem is a lot of these Wi-Fi devices, the drivers are old. They're older. They were designed to run on older kernels. So if you upgrade the Linux kernel, well, then you don't have a Wi-Fi driver. Now there is a generic Wi-Fi driver, but it just sucks. I'll be blunt, it fucking sucks. But what I could do is I could try SUSE or Fedora. But if you have, yeah, see, I don't know why it doesn't want to load this last DLL. So if you have a wired connection on Linux, excellent, no problems there. Just an Ethernet connection, you have a cable modem, a DSL modem, and you just plug in an Ethernet cable between the two. I would highly recommend that you use Linux to share your internet. It has a better firewall and it routes packets excellently. But when it comes to sharing Wi-Fi connections, it fucking sucks. It's not productive. It's just not good enough. So that's why I had to revert back to Vista. And then with current distributions, it's easy. You know how on Windows XP, Vista 7, 8, you just go into the the properties for the internet connection you want to share, and then you just click on the sharing tab and you turn on internet connection sharing. That is how easy it is on these Linux distributions. Ubuntu, Linux Mint, you just right click on the internet connection that you want to share for other computers or for a small network, and then you just turn on sharing, and that's about all you have to do. So it's real easy, but the problem is that the Wi-Fi drivers suck, and the built-in Wi-Fi driver that comes with a lot of the Debian distributions fucking sucks. I'm going to try to clean up this CD a little bit. I don't know if this is going to make a difference. I got to get this fucking XP installed, man. We'll try it one more time. If not, I'm going to probably have to... I don't have any CDRs or... Well, you know what? I have CDRWs. Here, I'll show you. I know I have some CDRWs. Here, we'll hit enter. Nope, it's going to fail there. I know I have 4 CDRWs. RW stands for rewritable. Highly recommend that you purchase some RWs, because, especially as a technician, because what you can do, even DVD RWs, you can format the CD or the DVD, and then you can reuse them. So this is an excellent for emergencies, or you might have disks that are failing. What else could, or USB flash drives that are failing, or just whatever. What you can do is you can burn a bootable operating system CD or DVD if you have to, and then you can just, you know, reformat that media and then use it for something else. So that's what I'm gonna have to do. So I'm gonna have to burn. And then what you can do, you can copy these too. You can rip them. And that's real easy. Or if you have the ISO, like I already have the ISO, so I'll just burn a version of Windows XP Service Pack 3 onto a CDRW. I'll be back. And I should be able to complete this install. I burned a copy of Windows XP Service Pack 3 onto the CDRW. Definitely recommended that you have some copies, well, just 4 or 5, whatever, of some CDRW and DVD-RW rewritables. They're more expensive than CDRs and DVD-Rs, but they're well worth it. Now let's see if my premonition works. I don't load Windows XP that often anymore. So, but a few years ago, I was selling a lot of pre-owned computers with Windows XP, and I had Windows XP Home Edition, Professional. I had like 6 CDs, and they were burned copies, and they all just hit the recycling bin because they just wear down after time. I used them so many times, and now even some of my manufacturer CDs are starting to wear down. But that's why you got to learn how to think outside of a box, because corporations, government, military, your pastor, religion, they don't teach you how to think outside of a box. They don't teach analytical, critical, logical thinking. At least I don't think they do. Alright, we'll see if this works. If not, I'll just start the installation from the very beginning. Nope, it's going to work. So there we go. Hopefully. Now, I didn't get any errors when I burned the CDRW. So, and I verified that it burned successfully. I mounted it and I just quickly tried to browse the file system. And so I should be able to well, I don't know. Maybe the ISO. See, what I did was I ripped one of the CDs that is failing and to an ISO. An ISO is just a type of file that, but you can read an ISO. You can actually use like 7-zip and you can actually open an ISO, but it's possible some of the files are still corrupt. But what I can do is I can use one of these other CDs because at least we're getting somewhere. And what I need to do is I need to get a good working Windows XP CD, and then I can rip the ISO and I can archive that. I can save that out on my file server. So in case of an emergency, I can always burn other copies, or I can burn it to flash drive, or I can burn it to a CDRW. But at least we moved along. So we may still be able to complete this install. It's just going to take longer than normal. But sometimes this is what you have to do, man. If you don't think outside of a box, you would have given up at the very first error. You would have given up if you wouldn't have, used any analytical thinking, critical, logical. Okay, so it's going to move along a little bit. It may not get all the way to 100%, but we can just keep, going back and forth. Play CD chairs again, musical CDs. With newer computers, you're going to have, you should be able to use most flash drives. The problem with going back in time is that I don't think I have a USB 1.0 or 1.1 flash drive. But what I could do is I could try to obtain one. Okay, it's moving on. Good. We're at 98%. It's going to fail again. Nope. Nope, I think we've done it. Oh, look at that. It got to 99%. The NT kernel PA. Well, we'll just keep playing musical chairs. Musical CDs. I just don't have any other Windows XP CDs, so I don't know how I'm going to get my hands on some. You can buy them on... You could probably find them on Craigslist or eBay. You know what I'm saying? Although I don't necessarily trust eBay because people will rip you off. I've never ripped anybody off. I've never been ripped off, but I'm just saying. There we go. It may finish. Yes, we got it. We've done it. Now this is not obviously, if you have a lot of computers to image, this is not the way to go. But when you use analytical, critical, logical, and even cynical thinking, you don't give up. You think outside of a box. How do I get Windows XP installed? How? They don't teach you this when you work for a corporation. The government doesn't necessarily teach you this. They don't give a fuck. You're just a foot soldier to them. They don't give a fuck about you. When you work for a huge corporation, they don't give a rat's ass about you, man. You're just a number. You're just 1 and 0. Or you're just a figure. You have an employee number and you've got a dollar value, and that's it. And they don't give a fuck. They're not going to train you per se. And you may get fired if you admit that you don't know how to perform all your job duties. I learned that long ago. I learned to keep my mouth shut. And if I didn't know something, I would go ask a coworker. And I learned never to lie during an interview. If I didn't know something, I admitted it during an interview. And sometimes they'll still hire you. They will. I've been hired for jobs where there was certain technology or a certain tool or something that the job duty required that I was not familiar with, and they asked me, "Do you know this? Do you know how to use this?" I was like, "No, I don't. I have not used it in an environment before." And they were like, "Oh, okay." But I was like, "I am willing to learn." And they still hired me. Whereas if I would have lied and said, "Oh yeah, I know how to use SCCM. I know how to use Pixie. I know how to create a bootable server," and then on the job, when it came time to me imaging a computer using, Pixie or, installing updates off of SCCM, and I didn't know what the fuck I was doing, well, then they would have fired my ass. Number one, for lying to them. Number two, because I was incompetent. And number three, because I was wasting their money. Because to corporate America, it's all about the money. That's all they care about. Money, money, money. The fake Federal Reserve notes. All right, I'm going to leave because this is going to take a long time. But usually the only problem I have when I have failing media, when it comes to installing operating systems, is during the main file where every file gets installed. Usually when it comes to the rest of the install, I never have a problem. It's just getting those files copied from the CD or the DV onto the hard drive. That's where failing media can become a bitch. But once those files are on the hard drive, then the rest, then it doesn't normally require, it's not always absolute, but I've noticed with these Windows XP installs and other versions of Windows, generally once I'm able to get the files copied onto the hard drive, then the rest of the installation goes smoothly and I don't have problems. I'll be back. Well, now my fucking software isn't stopping recording, so I have to do it manually with, let's see. Well, what the fuck? Alright, so we have a dialog here. Regional and language options, so I'm just going to click next. I don't normally change this. It's now if you are in a different country and you need to change the language, you can customize this, but I don't ever need to, since the software was developed in America. So now if you had a, I do have a Windows XP Service Pack 3 Spanish version, and you know what I'm saying? Alright, so let's click next. We can test the mice buttons. You know, it's got, I loved the IBM. Oops, I can't see my, okay, I loved IBM's mice. Dell's are good too, the Dell ones. The little nipple, they're called nipple mice. And they're mice buttons, so I always test those while I install operating systems. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so I'll just put something generic. User. Organization, we'll just put IBM. Or internet. How about I put international bullshit machines? And then what would happen is an IBM employee buys it from me, used, and then they complain and sue me. Fuck corporations. A lot of that is fear-mongering. Yes, on YouTube they try to shut you up, and they try to get your channel terminated, but, you know, force those motherfuckers to take you to court. That's what you should be doing. Although be careful, because they have a lot of money. Corporations have big legal departments, and they use warfare tactics called, they sue an individual, or they try to intimidate an individual. Alright, moving on. We'll just put IBM. I have to be politically correct. Sometimes I have to be politically correct. If I, you know, entered in international bullshit machines, and then the customer that bought this from me and found that out, you know, they'd get offended and they'd probably return the laptop. with a lawsuit. I mean, but that's how sick society is now, especially in America. Everything turns into a lawsuit. Well, fuck you and your lawsuits, you know? But you just become aware. As an entrepreneur, you may want to get an LLC, limited liability corporation, so they can't necessarily go after you personally, but they can go after your little business. I never enter a password, like I've said a million times before. And let's see, we'll just choose, the mouse works on this computer, so that's good. The only issue so far, I think, could be the Cmos battery, but I might be able to update the BIOS, and you know what I'm saying, I still might be able to sell this laptop. I need to test a few things first. It could be I'm trying to think. The battery, I think, is okay. It's green now. It's fully charged. I still need to test the battery. What you can do is you could just leave it on all night, boot it into the BIOS, and then just unplug the AC adapter from the wall and run it off the battery, and then overnight it'll eventually power off. And then that way you can monitor it. I actually recommend you monitor it, actually, because you don't know when it shut off. Just leave it powered on into the BIOS, running off the battery, and check back every half an hour so that you can kind of gauge when the battery fails, because it depends on the laptop, it depends on the type of battery, it depends on how many cells, but a lot of these older batteries should last, I would say, anywhere around an hour to 2 hours, maybe longer. It just really depends on. But you know, if the battery only lasts a half an hour, that might not be sufficient enough to sell it, or it might not be sufficient enough for you. This will take a while, and I'll be back when there's another dialogue.
I'm back! I'm replacing Aaron with that obnoxious mouth of his.
This setting I never change because I don't need to customize the settings. Now you can manually configure networking components. You can set a static IP address, or if you're in a networking environment, but I never change that, especially when I sell computers. Next, this, I don't change this either. I just accept the defaults, click next. Now you can change that. You can, you know, change it to your work group, but I don't need to, and I don't need to add it to a domain. So I'm going to click next, and I'll be back. Okay, so we have an error on screen. It's looking for a file, xolhelp.dll. Usually I don't have any problems once the files get copied from media to the hard drive, but like I said, it's not absolutist. So what I can do is I can click retry. I doubt it'll fix anything. I'll just try it anyways. And then I have the burned CDRW. And we'll try this. So this is kind of just a technique if you're desperate enough, or you really need to get Windows XP installed. And sometimes you have to go through these hoops. I wish it was a newer laptop, because I would have been able to install it off a flash drive, and I might not have had these problems, but you know, shit happens. There, so it doesn't mean it won't air out again, but hopefully that will be the only problem. And I can hear the CD being read, so it's moving on. I'll be back. Okay, the installation has completed. It proceeded. This XP did not air out again after the last error. Generally, when I get the copies, excuse me, I'm dyslexic, or I don't know, speaking backwards. When the files get copied from the media to the hard drive, usually I don't receive that many errors. But the installation completed, and now it's towards the end of the Windows XP setup. I wouldn't recommend that this is how you install an operating system, but when thinking outside of a box, sometimes if you want to, you know, if you're a quitter, You would have quitted after the very quitted. Terrible grammar. I don't know what my problem is today. You would have quit after the first error, and that's not acceptable to me. I'm not a quitter. Now sometimes you do have to quit, but you know, at least I'd try. So I'm going to click OK here. It's just going to test the video. This is the point of the install where I don't think any other files are accessed. Neither from the hard drive or the, well, you know what I mean. I don't think there are any more files copied over once you get to this point. This is Service Pack 3, which was the latest and greatest service pack that Microsoft released for Windows XP, in my opinion. I'm sorry, I'm getting teary-eyed and emotional because even though I don't like Microsoft, I hate them at times, but oh, even the swirl, even the sounds, I'm getting teary-eyed because I think this was Microsoft's only good operating system. It was their best operating system. And now it's nearing death. Okay. Now we'll just click next. I'm not gonna, should I hook it up to the internet? Why not? Now the computer technician below me, believe it or not, there's another computer technician in the same building, but when I signed my lease, they didn't have a compete clause. They didn't care. Some commercial buildings, some retail locations, you can't, they do not allow more than one business of the same type. But you know, my point is that he tried to register a version of Windows XP and he couldn't get it to, it was a weird error, an error I've never seen. I haven't activated Windows XP and I would say at least 6 months, if not a year. But I probably won't bore you with that. But it is possible that maybe Microsoft shut off the ability to even register Windows XP, which would be a deal breaker because, you know, I don't know, some of these, the Compact is in great shape. I could list it on eBay and sell it as is. I don't like to do that. I like to sell computers that are 100%, no missing parts, no failing parts, no problems, but I might have to, or you know what I'm saying? This one, if I can't get Windows XP activated, another thing I could do is I could load Linux on. Now this one, I think there could be one still remaining issue. That is the, when you change the time in the BIOS, when you set the time and date, and then you unplug the AC adapter from the wall, and then the next time you boot up, it warns you that the system date and time is not correct, and then it automatically boots into the BIOS where it wants you, it basically forces you to set the system date and time. If I can't get around that, if I can't update the BIOS to fix that, or I might have to take it apart, it could be the Cmos battery. If I can't rectify that, you know, and then I can't register the copy of Windows XP, I could load Linux on it. But I don't like to, like I said before, I don't like to sell computers with problems like that. If I can rectify all the problems except for not being able to register Windows XP, I'll just load Linux on it and it'll sell. Even though it is a Pentium 4, but when even Pentium 4 single cores with Windows XP, oh, they sell. Oh yes, they do. Last year I sold a few, and they sell pretty quick. Believe it or not, there's kind of a small demand for Windows XP. To me, it's Microsoft's best operating system they ever devised. The only one. You know what I'm saying? The only decent one. And some people need Windows XP because there's certain software that will not run on newer versions of Microsoft operating system. Alright, so let's click next. There is, when I list Windows XP machines, they sell pretty quick actually. I always choose this. The top one, help protect my PC by turning on automatic updates. Now, Microsoft does not officially support Windows XP. You know what I'm saying, but who cares? You just install, you turn on the firewall. Oh, you know what? Yeah, I did connect it to the internet. Okay, I'm going to choose a local area network. Although I don't have, you know what? My gateway's down still. I don't think my gateway's back up. Oh well, it's all good. It's all good. And I'll just choose these two. Obtain DNS automatic. I do have a DHCP server. My gateway, whether it's Linux or Windows, does have a DHCP server, because when you use internet connection sharing with Microsoft, Windows 10, 8, 7, Vista, XP, 2000, I don't know about Windows 95, but you know, who uses Windows 95 anymore? If anybody does use Windows 95, I wouldn't judge them. I wouldn't laugh at them. I'm not a snob. I don't think I am. I'm just the world's greatest narcissist, according to the trolls and the bastards and the assholes and the bitches and the, you know, the fuckers on the internet. Moving on. I don't want to register. I select no, then click next. I've always been accused of being people don't like me. I don't know why it is. I'm not saying all people hate me. I think it's intelligence. I'm not being a narcissist. I'm not saying I'm a genius. If you have any semblance of intelligence, people will hate you for it. Because you're not like them. You're not an idiot and a moron and an imbecile and a mental midget like they are. And so you're different. You're different to them. And they'll hate you for that. Something generic, we'll just type in user. They'll call you a nerd. You can label me anything you want. I don't give a fuck, man. Okay. So the installation is almost wrapped up. Now when it comes to Windows XP, I do load a firewall when I sell these computers. I usually load... Oh man, I'm getting emotional again. The Windows chime, the Windows XP chime. It just brings back memories of all those females that... Oh man, the good old days. Moving on. And I remember all the times that I wanted to bang my head on the desk because Windows without Service Pack 3 was a disaster. I ended up mentally abusing myself. Okay, so I usually load either Avast or AVG if I sell, you know, Windows XP computers. And then I make sure the firewall's on, and that's it. I don't change anything. I don't even move the recycle bin. I leave everything alone out of the box. I just leave it alone. I think you can still download Windows XP updates. Again, it's been at least 6 months or a year since I have, you know, imaged up computers for Windows XP. It could be that since then they've shut off the ability to, number one, activate Windows XP, number two, install updates. So we shall, I don't know, I don't think I'm going to go over any of that. I can't right now, my gateway is down. But just to let you know, the only other items that I go over, I load antivirus, a free version of Avast or AVG, and then I activate Windows, and then I install updates. But those procedures were, you know, like 6 months or a year ago. And that's basically it. And this was a copy of Microsoft Windows XP Service Pack 3 from a Dell copy. However, you really can't tell until you go in. I'm trying to remember. There's certain areas. I thought somewhere, maybe, let's see, maybe if you click start, sometimes it'll add, somewhere it'll add the Dell logo or the Dell information, and I think it does create a folder. So drivers, I am getting ahead of myself. Another thing I check before I proceed is drivers. So we can go into hardware, device manager, and to see this is an IBM. Now most times that I've used Dell OEM installation CDs for Windows XP and I loaded on Dell hardware, almost always I don't have to worry about drivers. There will be drivers. And I mean, and these are CDs that I've just collected. Almost always I don't have drivers issues. However, since this was a Dell CD, I would say there's really only a few differences between the CDs that where the manufacturer used to include it. Now they're stingy. Now they won't even, when you buy a new computer, they don't even give you install CDs. They don't even, you're lucky if they give you recovery CDs. It's all on the hard drive now. Moving on. Really about the only differences are the drivers. And then so now I would have to go out on the internet. Windows XP, I think Snappy installer, Snappy driver installer, and this other one that I haven't used in Driver Pack. I don't like Driver Pack as much, but Snappy driver installer or Driver Pack, they support Windows XP. So I would just throw in the Driver Pack CD, or you can run it off the network. I have Snappy driver installer set up on my network now, so I don't even need to throw in a DVD, and then it'll look for missing drivers and it'll install them for you. So that would be the next step. I guess should I do it now? Should I show you the process of Driver Pack? Yeah, why not? Why not? So now with Snappy driver installer, you can burn a DVD with all the drivers, but it's quite large. I think it's 14 gigabytes, which I don't think would fit on a double-sided. So let me think. I'm not sure. I haven't tried it yet. So this saved me. This came in handy. I bought these at Target. They're more expensive than CDRs, but they're well worth the price. You know, these have saved me a lot. When I install Macintosh operating systems, sometimes I have to use these, because with older Mac operating systems, you'll find let me move on, because whatever. Okay, let me put that back in its case. Yeah, whatever. Macs are a pain in the ass to find old media, man, I'm telling you. And technically you're not supposed to even make copies of the original discs, which to me is absurd. I don't know how they enforce that, but yeah, you don't want to get caught selling burned copies of Mac CDs on the internet. Yeah, they might come after you for that, but whatever, man. I know Snappy also you can burn a DVD. I'm not sure if it would fit on one DVD. I haven't even tried it, but you can download all the drivers and burn it to me, or even a flash drive. But I've got this Driver Pack solution. It's similar to Snappy, and all the drivers are on this one DVD. They're still supported. They have an online version just like Snappy. It's just a small piece of software that you download, and then you can download all the driver packs onto your computer and then set up a server, or you can set it up so it will only download drivers for the specific computer you're working on. Now, that can also save you, because the reason why Driver Pack or Snappy, the full version that fits on maybe one DVD or a flash drive, the reason why it can save you is if you don't have internet connection. You could be at a client and they don't want you on their network. They don't want you using their internet, or whatever. Or, I mean, seriously, all the drivers are on the CD for most computers. Now, Driver pack doesn't work 100%, so no, I'm not going to download any. I click cancel here. Usually I click on settings on the left hand side, and then I choose expert mode. Now be aware, I like driver pack, I don't like driver pack. It's a paradox. The part that sucks is that it will automatically try to load some applications that are in Russian, and it's like, so why? What the fuck? So, but you can uncheck those, but if you don't know what you're doing, you end up installing the software that you have to remove. It'll tell you missing drivers. Now here's where I'm talking about, under programs. I don't know why the fuck they have it set up this. By default, they have software that they will automatically load, which I don't know how they justify that. Because why? They're Russian developers, so that doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me that the software is in Russian. What bothers me is that by default they want to load this software and force you to, I just don't agree with that. But what you can do is you can turn it off. When you click on, when you click on install and update, so you need to become aware of that with driver pack. You click on install and update, and then you're going to, okay, right here, you need to pay attention here. Scroll down. You see all this crapware? You see all this bloatware that it wants to install? Internet Explorer 8, Yandex browser, codec pack, flash player, shock player, Visual C libraries, Java. Ooh, Java. Yeah, let's load Java. And yeah, where do you want to go today, Aaron? You want to, blow up your computer by installing Java? No. So select install drivers, and then it will not install any of the previous software. It'll only install drivers. So I learned that. And then also, I don't create a restore point because it takes more time, but I would recommend that if you use these utilities like Snappy and even driver pack, that you enable create a restore point. What that's going to do is, before it tries to install any drivers, it will create a restore point. If for some reason the drivers fail, or the computer doesn't boot properly, or something fucks up, something gets fucked up, by you having a restore point, you can restore your computer back to before you tried to install drivers with either driver pack or Snappy installer. So to save time, I'm going to uncheck that because I usually don't have that many problems. And, quite frankly, I could get out of that quagmire without much effort. So, but I do recommend that you enable that. You know what I'm saying? Just in case something happens. I'm going to click Start Installation. This can take some time, so don't freak out. You may get some errors. This application sometimes comes up with false positives. And, duplicate driver packs are found. I don't care about that. Wait a minute. Why isn't it doing anything? Let me try that again. Normally it starts installing as soon as you know what? It's still loading. It might still be loading. Sometimes I get some weird errors with this program. It should load a network driver, a modem driver, unknown device, and video drivers. Well, it took me back. Well, I don't know what the fuck it's doing. Let's try it again. Click install and update, and then okay, and then start installation. Let's try it again. What is this warning? Selected several drivers for the device there can cause problems. So it's trying to warn me, but let me scroll up. Maybe there are multiple. It says duplicate. Normally I don't get this error. Duplicate drivers. How about, you know what? Let's uncheck driver updates. Let's uncheck these. Come on. This is, oh yeah, see, it said duplicate. Usually this program doesn't fuck up like this. It's got weird errors that, you know, if you say no, it doesn't affect anything. But now it's going to install. I don't know why. That's weird. So it did find a duplicate. Now it's installing. As long as you see this dialog, it can take a while. The reason why I say that is some of the drivers, like the video drivers, can take fucking a long time. Even if you were to download them manually, install them yourself, it can take a long time, especially on older technology like this Pentium 4 mobile. But I usually just walk away. It might take a half an hour, it may take an hour. You know, wait until it gets to 100%. Even this program isn't perfect. Sometimes I wait another half an hour and I have to power cycle the computer, but when I reboot it, the drivers get installed. Sometimes they don't always install and I have to do it a second time, but this saves you so much time, because I would have to go out on the internet and I would have to find all these drivers on my own. And with older technology, sometimes you can't even find drivers anymore on these manufacturer websites because they don't necessarily archive them. So having a tool like either Driver Pack or Snappy Installer can fucking save you a lot of time. It can potentially save you money, because, you know, time is labor, which turns into money. And then it can save you, you know, from having to visit a shrink. You might have to start seeing a therapist from all of this mental abuse. So analytical, critical, cynical, logical thinking, to me, is very productive. We're already at 9%, but we're not even at the video drivers, which normally take a long time. I would recommend that if you can burn the media, burn it, or set up a file server. You can network Snappy Installer, which I've done. Now this one, you might get this dialog. It'll warn you that the driver has not gone through testing. Don't worry about that. I've never had a problem with any of these. I just usually click continue anyway. This one isn't airing out. What is this? Uh-oh. I've never seen, this is not. The target file exists and is a different language than the source. Overwrite the English file with the unspecified language one? The target file exists. What if I say no? That's strange. Okay, anyways. It used to have these like C++ errors or some bullshit like errors, and if I clicked yes, then the program would close. If I clicked no with Driver Pack, it would continue on, and then sometimes it would pop up 2 or 3 or 4 times. So whatever. And you just sit back and monitor it, or you can walk away. But sometimes it will prompt you for the ones that are not necessarily tested or whatever, logo tested, or like that little error. But I almost never receive that kind of an error. Now, as far as Driver Pack, I haven't tried to network it yet. I tested Snappy Installer, and what I do is I use the light version, which is only 4 megabytes, and I go to each computer and then run the light version. And then what it will do, I run it directly off my server, the light version, and then I noticed that it's saving all the drivers that I downloaded for each computer. So now it's starting to download driver packs. And so if I install drivers on a computer that already has those drivers, it will notice it out on my server and it will load quicker. I'm not sure if that will work with Driver Pack. I haven't tested it yet. Driver Pack does have a light version, It's just a client. It's not very big. I'll have to test that out, because that's another option, is that even if you don't have internet access, if you have a local server, you can set up these two tools so that if your internet goes down, then you may be able to install some drivers. However, or what you could do is you could go ahead and download all the driver packs. They're, I would say, anywhere from 10 to 20 gigabytes, and store them on your server. And that way, if your internet goes down, or it could be faster. It would be faster, because instead of this program having to go out on the internet each time, it's going to look for those drivers locally. And then I would recommend that if you do install all the driver packs locally onto a server, that every once in a while, I don't know, whenever you have time, go out and check for updates. Go out and make sure you have the most current updates. So utilities like these can really save your ass, because there could be instances where you don't have internet access. Well, you know what? I'll let it go. Usually, I think the video drivers a lot of times are last, but I've noticed that. I'm going to take off. I really have nothing else. This should go right. It's just going to install the drivers. I'll have to reboot it. Maybe I'll show you, I don't know. It's just going to come up and say that successful, and it'll say that a restart is required. Reboot the computer, and it will finish installing the video drivers. And then what you might want to do is, because this program isn't, perfect, and it's free, go into computer, right click my computer, and then go to properties, then go to the hardware tab, go to device manager. And another thing sometimes I do is monitor it. There should be, see, now there's only 2 missing drivers. You can leave this open, and as the drivers get loaded, they'll disappear, except for maybe the video driver, which will, or some of the drivers require reboot. Once you reboot after using this or Snappy installer, I would recommend you go into device manager and make sure there's no drivers that are missing. What it should look like this, and there should not be the other devices. It should all the categories should be look like this. See, now it's updating itself. None of them should be expanded, and you should not see any yellow exclamation points, and you should not see this category. So it would look just like this, except for this would be missing. And then you're done. As far as updating drivers, I don't fuck with that. Now, my personal computers, I do, but you need to be careful, because what can happen if you update a driver, believe it or not, just because a driver is newer doesn't necessarily mean that it's perfect. What you could do, and that happens with networking devices, I've noticed. Your Ethernet connection is just fine, or your Wi-Fi connection is just great. Well, you went and upgraded the driver for that device, and all of a sudden your internet is slower. It could be because the driver has a bug. So when it comes to my selling computers or my customers, I don't fuck with updating drivers. I just install missing drivers, and that's it. I don't waste time making sure any drivers that aren't updated are updated. Now, my computers, I sometimes spend my time, but caveat emptor, man. Buyer beware. Be careful what you wish for when you fuck with drivers, man. I'm telling you. So I just get the drivers loaded, and then boom. Then the next thing I would do is load either AVAS or AVG. I would make sure the firewall is turned on, and then I have to activate it. With Windows XP, you get 30 days. It'll keep warning you down here in the taskbar, and then you need an internet connection, but you can activate Windows XP over the phone. I never do that unless I have to. Once in a while, the security key doesn't go through, and you end up having to call Microsoft. They do have an automated system, and I think once or twice I had to actually talk to a real human. But so then I would activate it, and then I don't load any other software. I don't load an additional web browser, because with Windows XP it updated it to like Internet Explorer 8, I think, which is sufficient enough for the individual to. There's another prompt, so I'm going to click continue anyway. And then what you would do is check, yes, let's activate Windows over the internet now. You have to have an internet connection. My gateway is down, but I'm just showing you. And then I would say, what, 99% of the time it goes through. Oh, blue screen. This might happen, but don't panic. Don't panic. And I'm just gonna have to, reboot. It's got this port cls.sys. It didn't like that driver or whatever that is. So blue screen. Hopefully most of the drivers got installed. And then I'm going to hit F8 because I'm going to choose last known good configuration. Well, I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. That's a blue screen. A lot of times I don't get blue screens when I install. But Microsoft's not perfect, so it could have been one of the drivers that was trying to get installed. With driver pack, I almost choose all of them, and then what you might want to do is install one at a time. Definitely with Snappy. Snappy's a little bit different. Snappy, I've noticed if I install the drivers one at a time, I have less problems. If you try to install all of them at once, you might run into problems. Generally with driver pack, I don't have a problem. Usually I select all of them and they will install sequentially. But alright, well, I'm going to take off. This is the end of this video because there's not much left. I still need to test this computer because of some, weirdness going on. I didn't like that blue screen. The computer completely powered off during one of the attempts of installing Windows XP. I still have to deal with the battery, the system time and date, and then I have to see if I can register this version of Windows XP. Adios!